it may sound crazy, but before the fame, Tatsuki Fujimoto was not just a talented singer or a superhero with powers like being able to almost levitate in the air. Before this success that arguably came with Chainsaw Man, Fujimoto was a rising writer with a clear identity and many ideas. Besides, talking about his earlier works on here has been long overdue. So let's begin, shall we? Funny from the name alone, Tetteleposan is first on the menu. That Fujimoto wrote this story when he was only 12 years old could find confirmation from the childishly silly beginning featuring a confused kid in the middle of a blizzard. After screaming the word Tetteleposan repeatedly, an intrigued monster appears. Now, despite being randomly flipped off, the creature decides to give the kid a hand in her search for Tetteleposan. Also, it goes without saying that this work could very well be a sort of Fire Punch prototype. There is even a hint at the end of the first chapter warning us that there is something wrong going on behind the distracting absurdity we are spectating, as not only does the monster wonder where the kid came from, but even he cannot explain how he came to be, as if casually spawned in that instant. Moving on, the journey to find Tetteleposan leads the two to the monster's grandpa, an all-knowing type of character that, disappointingly, is of no help. Also, he's pretty weird, of course. On a side note, I like how messy this snow is drawn. It's something that gives it a sense of naturalness, unlike the hands. These are truly drawn by a 12-year-old, but I would probably get an even worse result if I tried now. Again, at the end of this short episode, we are reminded once more that something is off. But the search continues regardless, encounter after encounter, stroke by stroke, though it seems like it's all in vain, when suddenly the friendly monster grows a horn and wants to kill everything. Reasonably scared, the kid flees and climbs up a tower around which no snow falls. Once at the top, surrounded by complete darkness, the wind blows off her hood, revealing she's been missing half of her head the entire time. It is here that Tetteleposan finally appears. Inviting the kid to go back, Tetteleposan brings the warmth back to the world in one surgical slash of his sword. From what I seem to understand, the kid suffers from brain cancer, while Tetteleposan is the cure that only apparently dispels the disease. In fact, the problem with such kinds of therapy is that while they are indeed effective at targeting the cells that have gone crazy, they collaterally hit the healthy parts of the brain too, which eventually causes considerable after effects. So, at the end, it is implied that the girl would have been better off not finding Tetteleposan at all, since she will inevitably face the negative consequences of the therapy, following a momentary period of refound well-being. The story is surprisingly deep, which makes me doubt if it was really written at such a young age, and this is without even considering that I'm not convinced about the very attribution to Fujimoto. Anyway, really good stuff. Next, Earth is now dominated by man-eating aliens. So many people have died that mankind has basically been driven to extinction. But there are both good and bad news. Good news is that a few survivors are still lurking around. Bad news is it's just a couple of kids and they're disguised as chickens on top of that. That's right. No matter how powerful and smart the aliens, the only way for them to tell animals and people apart is from their face. So a chicken mask is more than enough for humans to fool them. What makes everything even sillier is that they don't eat chicken until, of course, a new alien arrives in town and makes it his priority to state his love for chicken. In the meantime, we follow the alien Yuhei, who seems like a nice guy, and By the way, he's also stalked by a yandere. Yes, I need to include this piece of information for later, trust me. More importantly though, we learn that he's an exception among his kind, since he doubts if it's actually right to eat an intelligent species like ours. He also eventually finds out the two chickens are humans, but in a lucky turn of events, Yuhei decides to help them escape the chicken eater guy by dressing them as cats, only that this alien eats cats too. Turns out Yuhei is the rumored hero who's secretly been saving humans, but that's as far as his plot armor goes, and he dies a few pages later. That's when we're hit with yet another plot twist. One of the two humans, or should I say cats, or maybe chickens? Anyway, one of these two is actually an alien. When the invasion started, backtracking a bit, this alien realized he had to put himself in the human's shoes to understand if he was on the right side. Saved the little girl he was living with, the manga ends in a total badass way, with the start of a war that'll see this alien fight against his kind, joined by the yandere after her loved one's death. Some patterns typical of Fujimoto's art style are very evident here. For example, he still fails to convincingly draw people running, and among the many surreal traits, I find very funny that aliens have Japanese names, but to be fair, it is stated that they like our culture, so they may have absorbed it to some degree. Very solid one shot. I rate it a chicken out of 10. Sasaki is a student caught simping over his teacher when, all of a sudden, an old classmate of hers shows up in class with a gun. He explains everything in his life went downhill after she turned him down. In order to protect the kids, Kameguchi-sensei agrees to let the terrorist do anything he wants to her, but our protagonist could never accept what that pervert has in mind, especially considering that he believes his teacher to be a goddess. So, ready to die, Sasaki taunts the man and ends up being shot at, but he somehow stops the bullet. Right after that, a flashback reveals the boy's dream is going to the moon to find his late father there. The possibility of that being true is non-existent, 0%, but that's only an approximation. More often than not, people say something is impossible out of pure laziness, and so it really could be true that his sensei is actually a goddess, as she claims, or that his dad is waiting for him in space. Thanks to his power of belief alone, Sasaki stops the bullet with his bare hand and wins the confrontation against the other lover. 20 years later, now on the moon, our main character acknowledges his father's absence on the Earth's satellite, but it does not matter, he still got there. What actually matters is the power of belief. This story was fine, with a nice message. Let's move on to Love is Blind. Ibuki's been having a hard time building up the courage to confess to his crush, but today is the day. There are only a few problems. First, he's stopped by a teacher who would like him to stay at school, though thanks to the visible determination in his eyes, Ibuki is let go. Then, waiting the rain out, he tries to confess once more, but only ends up dodging the topic while looking very stressed and coming off as weird to the girl. Suddenly, a man walks up and threatens them for money, but since Ibuki doesn't have the time for that, he takes off his expensive uniform. Then, an alien joins them saying he will destroy the Earth. But there is no time for that either. Finally, Ibuki confesses his love, leaving everybody shocked, including the alien who just found out he likes gossip. All well that ends well. The alien decides he won't destroy the planet, and the criminal buys the kids some drink. So, the message of this story is that people have a time in their life where they absolutely must do something, or they will regret it forever. Though, how much can you ignore the rest? Shikaku is an interesting case in her similarity to Makima, not just in terms of design, but also because of a certain scene where she shows the eyes she's taken out of some thugs. Right, because even though she may not look like it, Shikaku is a flawless assassin, unable to empathize with her victims, or just about anyone, something her abusive mother beat her for, despite her apologies. Shikaku's life changes when a client asks her to kill him, which she does immediately. But just as fast, the guy, who's a vampire, regenerates. For the first time in her life, Shikaku sees her apology accepted, an apology due for her failed attempt at bringing death upon a person who's simply too bored to go on living any longer, since vampires are immortal. The two's relationship quickly turns from a simple death contract into something entirely different, to say the least, when Shikaku, cluelessly fallen in love, visits a hospital to understand what's happening to her heart, which would be fine if she wasn't like a wanted criminal all over the world. This silly behavior makes the vampire laugh for the first time in centuries. So he makes his way to Shikaku, who's on the verge of death, and turns her into a vampire. The two lived happily ever after, never bored again together. It's very curious to see where Fujimoto's characters originate from, like Makima here. And funnily enough, if Shikaku got, let's say, tasted by the vampire when she was turned into one, Makima too at the end of Chainsaw Man got tasted by Denji. Maybe not in the way he would have preferred though, initially at least. Toshihide is a kid who likes spending time playing an undersea piano. It's only here that he can vaguely remember his dead mother, who was a mermaid. One time, being too long underwater, he almost drowns, but gets rescued by a mermaid who was listening to his music. Let's also not forget to mention that she's a tsundere, and that Toshihide wouldn't mind being eaten by her simply because of her beauty. The two eventually get closer until the mermaid instinctively bites Toshihide's ear off. It's at this point, after some time from the incident during which the two didn't see each other, that his father reveals he went through something similar, and just like in Toshihide's case, the mermaid's smile outshined every fear. Back to the sea playing music, even more mermaids come to listen in, despite their difficult relationship with humans, though music appears to connect the two worlds. I just wonder why they are all dressed as schoolgirls. I think Fujimoto might have a kink, because it's not the first time stuff like this happens. Then again, to make Toshihide play longer, the mermaids alternate with each other to breathe air into him, even though Toshihide is technically dating one mermaid already. I don't know, I can't take this story seriously when I know the main character is Fujimoto's self-insert, but it was still very cool. This is another story written after Fire Punch that covers the theme of gender dysphoria, though in a light way. Upon waking up in the morning, Toshihide, yeah, same name as before, discovers he's no longer a guy, but a girl, with everything made worse by the fact he has a girlfriend. According to the doctors, the disease is incurable and no surgery could be of help, since his body will just revert to female. As expected, everybody at school, from professors to students, is very supportive. I'm just kidding, he gets bullied. Luckily, a senpai intervenes, carrying him away. Coincidentally, it's his girlfriend's brother. But a new problem arises. Toshihide is starting to have a literal change of heart, as he felt something when senpai stepped in. Brought up the embarrassing issue to his girlfriend. She decides the only solution is immediate sex, which is when her brother casually walks in and gets punched by his jealous sister, who runs away. Here, senpai tells Toshihide it's time to make a choice. Either keep crying, like the little girl he's been his entire life, or be a man and go get his girlfriend to have sex with her. Toshihide chooses to catch up to her with noble intentions. This is a funnier story than it may sound. Well, touching on a very delicate topic, but it's also yet another proof of how eclectic an author Fujimoto is. Not afraid to explore sensitive topics and use humor as a very powerful assistant to convey his message. Nayuta is a peculiar girl. It seems she cannot get violence out of her head, but it's not just her words to be murderous, even her actions appear to be so, as she brutally slays and eats little animals. Everything would perhaps make more sense if we mentioned that Nayuta is at the center of a prophecy, stating that a two-horned girl lacking a human heart will soon destroy the world. Because of certain fanatics, Nayuta's dad was killed, and her mother perished when giving birth to her. She's only got her brother Kenji, who sacrifices himself totally to support her. In fact, Kenji dropped out of school to find a job, but the stigma around Nayuta eventually gets him fired in every place he goes. The talk around his sister does not concern him because what some believe to be a monster is, after all, still his sister. Though it would be false to say he's not scared of her sometimes, especially when trying to educate Nayuta, who often seems to be able to understand her brother. Things get tough when, after learning of Kenji losing his job, Nayuta slays someone's herd of cow to secure food for the next weeks. The next morning, the farmers come to complain about the incident, ask for compensation without hiding their fear of Nayuta. In fact, who could guarantee it won't be them next to be killed? Kenji somehow manages to delay this inevitable confrontation with his sister about her actions and offers to repay the damage through his hard work. In the meantime, Nayuta is shown reading books and writing something on a piece of paper. It's an apology. So even if unable to clearly tell right from wrong, she does not lack empathy. At least for her brother, which is additionally proven when she shows visible concern over him, coming back incredibly exhausted after the following night's work. Furious and mindful of the fanatics who caused her family's ruin, Nayuta decides to destroy the world and make the prophecy come true. Moments before that, having found the apology, Kenji saves everyone by slapping his sister. As it turns out, he'd never scolded her properly because of his fear. Nayuta even hugs him while in tears, demonstrating to be far from the evil monster everyone pictured her as. Fled from their hometown, Kenji and Nayuta start a new happy life. The lesson here is that sometimes you have to be harsh to teach someone you love a lesson. I'm not caught up with Chainsaw Man Part 2, but this one shot should not be neglected in view of possible developments in the manga. Imagine going to art school. You don't particularly like it there, but it's still okay. There is even your younger sister attending it, so you're not alone. Okay, now imagine there is an art contest. You participate in it, but unluckily you lose to your sibling, who gets to show her painting in the school hall for an entire year, as the school tradition demands. Only that the painting is you, naked. This is the kind of story our main character is dealing with here. With everyone embarrassingly talking about it, the protagonist, Fujimoto, does not name any character in this story, swears revenge on her sister, whose nude will be hopefully exposed next the following year. Strangely, it doesn't look like the younger sister is upset to have her victim draw her naked to practice and absolutely willing to win the next art contest. Rather, she's enjoying spending time like this as the two siblings stopped talking once the younger sister joined the same art school. The relationship between them is the primary focus of the story. The little sister painted her sibling thanks to her imagination alone. She didn't need her as a model because, having looked up to her for her entire life, she had every detail to paint in mind from the start. Upon learning this, our protagonist decides to teach her fan how to actually draw, since her painting had a few inaccuracies. So, changed her mind. The story concludes with yet another nude exposed at school. But this time, it's the older sister to have won. But once again, it's the older sister and not the younger one to have their body shown to everybody. After this, the two become friends once again. This is probably the best one-shot out of all that I've read, if we exclude the later works from Fujimoto. The paneling and art are also one step ahead of the rest, and you can see some look-back ideas here. Finally, just listen to the song. It's an interesting one for sure, since it seems to be a message to certain Redditors or Twitter enthusiasts who perhaps see too much into things that aren't meant to be taken so seriously. Or maybe, seeing how much I've dissected Fujimoto's other works, he may actually be dissing me here. I'm sure he knows I exist. Anyway, the story follows a guy who confesses his love to a girl through a song that he uploads to YouTube. Very nice of her. The girl shares the link with everybody, having found the song hilarious. Everyone starts making fun of our protagonist, and just before the poor guy deletes the video, the internet starts doing its thing, finding a ghost in it, or several other crazy hidden messages by reversing the audio or looking at apparent symbolisms. The video blows up, which forces a second video to be uploaded on the channel, called Just Listen to the Song, inviting everybody to relax. There is even a bot in the comments promoting a scam. It doesn't get better than this, and yeah, I'm not gonna miss a single chance to just shit on YouTube. In the end, the original video gets deleted, but everyone has downloaded a copy of it already, including his crush, who shows him some support by listening to the song with him, remembering the episode from their childhood it took inspiration from. Though I'm not sure if she's listening to it because she finds it simply funny instead. Fujimoto has to be my favorite author because of how unpredictable and degenerate he is, but he can also be a very sensitive person, which I hope emerged from this video. Hopefully he still has many more stories for us, and with this, I thank you for watching. Bye bye.